Okay, thanks very much, Tom. And before we begin, let me thank each of the committee members for taking time to participate in this off-cycle meeting today, and also for reviewing the materials. And speaking of the materials, let me express my appreciation, and I'm sure the committee's appreciation, to all the members of the Office of Board of Trustees who put out the timely reminder this morning and the attachment for the strategic plan. I'm sure that was helpful and appreciated by all of us. For the sake of audio clarity, for the public listening to the audio stream via WPSU, following the roll call, if committee members would please mute your connection when you are not speaking, that would be much appreciated, and I believe it will improve the quality of the sound for the listeners of our call today. I'll ask Tom Pancala at this time to call the committee roll.
Eckel.
Present.
Huber.
Present.
D'Andrea.
Here.
Duran.
Here.
Hahn.
Here.
Hoffman.
Present.
Lubrano.
Here.
Mead.
Here.
And Mosser.
Here.
Thank you, Tom. It would appear that we have 100% attendance. To lay the context for today's committee meeting, I would remind us that for over a year, Provost Jones has been briefing various committees, as well as the full board, on the status and the progress of the strategic planning process. In fact, if memory serves me right, I believe our first discussion with Provost Jones on this subject goes back to 2013. The Strategic Planning Council, which includes Trustees Mead and Casey, has been working diligently to identify and articulate Penn State's priorities and goals for 2016 through 2020. Identifying goals at a macro level in order to set a strong foundation for their pursuit in the upcoming years. As you all know, once high-level strategies are unveiled, the university will then begin working on articulation of specific steps, responsibilities, and matrices for implementation and progress measurement. A plan draft was provided to all trustees on October 24, requesting input to the provost by November 9. The plan document is now at the point of committee approval, which is under the committee's jurisdiction as outlined in the board's bylaws. Each of you received the plan document on December 23. While it is not technically required, we also intend that the plan, as approved, be submitted to the full board for its concurrence in February. I think we all recognize the importance of this plan. At this point, I'll call for a motion for the committee to approve the strategic plan and recommend that the full board provide its concurrence in February. May I have a motion?
This is Dan Mead, so moved.
It's been moved by Trustee Mead. Is there a second?
David Hahn.
Seconded by David Hahn. And is there discussion?
Yes, sir. Yes. Trustee Eckel, this is Trustee Lubrano.
Yes.
My voice is a little hoarse, so I apologize if you can't hear me particularly well. I have some remarks I'd like to make for the record. I will provide those remarks to Tom later. Chairman Eckel and fellow trustees, I must confess to my surprise that we are being asked to approve Pennsylvania State University strategic plan for 2016 to 2020 in its current form. I have concerns about the process by which this plan was developed as well as the product itself. Please let me explain. First, my concerns about the process. The American Council of Trustees and Alumni, commonly known as ACTA, addresses the need for a strategic plan to have input from 3 co-fiduciary groups: administration, faculty, and board. The plan we are asked to approve today was made primarily by the administration, with very little meaningful input from the faculty or board. Our provost informs us that the Strategic Planning Council was the body responsible for the plan, but I ask, how does a 33-member group work together effectively on a complex project? Parenthetically, we have experienced firsthand the difficulty of 36 trustees working together. The Faculty Senate saw the draft strategic plan in its final stages and had very little input. The faculty on the council were primarily administrators. What is the justification for making long-range plans for academic programming without full involvement from faculty? The primary board committee that should have involvement in strategic planning is Academic Affairs and Student Living, better known as AASL. In our bylaws, AASL, and I quote, shall consider and report or recommend to the Board of Trustees on matters pertaining to, 1, the educational policies and programs of the university, including the long-range educational development of the university. Best practices dictate ongoing and meaningful involvement of a university's board standing committee on academics when creating a strategic plan, yet our AASL had no involvement in planning and received only periodic updates saying the council was working on the plan. Arguably, other board committees should have had involvement in the planning process, particularly finance. It is inconceivable that a strategic plan would not include some financial projections to support the academic planning. Was this done without input from the Finance Committee? And how about the need for capital projects? Is this considered somewhere within the strategic plan? Now my concerns about the product. The strategic plan as presented is a statement of broad visionary goals. Although individual units, i.e. colleges, are creating their own plans to align with these visionary goals, where are the overarching goals and strategies for the university as a whole? The document as presented to GLRP, Governance Long Range Planning Committee, for approval is without meaningful content. In my opinion, nothing within the document offers direction for board-level decision-making, No metrics or objective outcomes associated with concrete goals and strategies that can be monitored to determine whether progress is being made are referenced. If these are to be added later, as the provost has said, then the Governance and Long Range Planning Committee should wait then and review, and if appropriate, approve that document. This is not a strategic plan until concrete and specific goals with associated strategies and measurable outcomes are included. To what extent were rapidly developing changes in the higher education landscape and their expected impacts on PSU considered when developing this plan? Are the reports on these changes available for trustees to review? Were demographic trends in Pennsylvania, the United States, and abroad reviewed for enrollment planning? Again, are reports available for review by trustees? If so, then how were they used to develop the plan? Does each of the Commonwealth's campuses have its own plan? Is there a plan for the campus system as a whole? What studies were done to support this planning? In short, because of these concerns, I will be voting against the strategic plan in its current form. In my opinion, our commitment to impact the Pennsylvania State University strategic plan for 2016 to 2020 is neither a plan nor is it strategic. Thank you, Chair. That will conclude my remarks.
Is there further discussion?
Yeah, Keith, this is Barb. I found our last governance committee meeting quite helpful. And when I was asking Nick about implementation and how will we know if we are reaching our goals, and that's, I guess in some part it's a little bit of what Anthony was saying, that the purpose of any strategic plan, besides articulating the institutional mission and our vision, which I think they did a very good job here. It was really lots of good stuff there, but I thought really for any strategic plan, the big part of it is really the implementation plan, the tactical plan. How are we going to implement it? And Nick had said that, he knew that and there was going to be a continuing process of doing that, but my concern is that the purpose of a strategic plan is really to drive resource allocation. And I'm really not clear what kind of resources will be needed, whether it's in people or time or space or technology. They talked about all that, but there's no way to measure our progress. I mean, how are we going to know if we reached whatever goals are being articulated in a very general way, and then how do we prove that? And so that, to me, on any strategic plan, needs some form of implementation strategy, which will be evolving, but that kind of is risky to me. I mean, that can sort of be very reactive and short term, and also some measure of accountability and monitoring. How do we know every step along the way? Because obviously a strategic plan, needs to be flexible. It needs to be a dynamic, living thing, but this one may be, in my view, may be going too far in that direction. I think, to me, it's unfinished. I think it's good as far as it goes, but for me, I'd be much more comfortable with that third part, and that's really, spelling out how we're going to get there, and not in infinite detail, but with some idea of the resources and the timing and how we're going to measure if we're achieving all the things, because we have quite a number of things that are being outlined here. So that's actually I've been just thinking a lot more and doing more research since our last meeting, and I think that's a big issue.
Further comments from other members of the committee?
This is Dan Mead. If I could comment, some of the same questions that Barb has asked and outlined, I have asked, others have asked during the course of the preparation of this plan. The way that I have looked at it in all my participation is that this is an anchor for those next steps as we go forward. This is, I would say, not the operational plan as outlined, and that's what I'm used to in my work, the operational plan as Barb described it. But I think that this is a well-thought-out plan with a good deal of support with the breadth of the university involved in this, and I'm recommending that we approve this plan today so that the team can get on to the next phase that is important to everyone.
Dan, I'm reminded, of course, that you served as a member of that task force as well as a member of our committee, and perhaps with that insight, were you comfortable with the opportunity for input that you had in being one of the two trustees representing the board?
Yeah, I gave a fair amount of input on the calls. I also, I met with Nick a couple of times regarding things that I thought were important. I thought one of the things that we wanted to do with this plan, as described here, was to make sure that it was inclusive for the breadth of the university, to not have it a university part-specific plan. I also, as I just mentioned, I also brought up the point more than once to the committee about the importance of having measurements so that we can go forward and determine that we're truly making progress. And as I described that in those calls, owners, timelines, dollars, how do we know that we're achieving what we want to do? The other point that I brought up and talked about, as many others did, is the importance of the integration of this plan with the efforts for our next campaign, so that people, so it would be cohesive and thought out. So those are some of the major comments that I made along the way. Thank you, Chair Eckel.
Thank you. Further comments from the committee?
Yeah, I just want. Oh, sorry.
Keith, it's Carl Schaefer.
Yes.
I just want to say I've been involved with several strategic plans over the years, and we haven't done one since 2008, so we're very far overdue for having accomplished one. But I will say this one is probably the most inclusive of any that I've ever been involved in, and it lays out a general direction which the university needs to go. And I want to commend the people that worked on it. I think it's a great progress. I think it's a great document. I really suggest that you move it.
So Chair Eckel?
Yes, Trustee Lebrano.
I'm glad to hear that Emeritus Trustee Schaefer is on our call. Carl, the last plan that was done was actually for the period is 2009-10 through 2013-14, so I'm not sure where you were when that was completed, but if you like, I can send it to you.
It was 2008 to 2013.
2009-10 through 2013-14. I'm looking at it. That's what it says.
And is it all right if I say something?
Who do I have?
It's Eric.
Yes, Dr. Barrett.
So I've been involved in a lot of university strategic plans, 3 or 4 for colleges, 2 different universities, national lab, 1 at a university level at Florida State, and now this one. So first of all, the notion that this is representative of the administration as opposed to the faculty and the units just doesn't make sense at all. This plan was actually built on all the strategic ideas that came up from all of the different units. I myself specifically went through the strategic plan and then went down to a college level and a institute level to see if what was reflected in the university wide plan was actually what was coming up from all of the different units for which faculty are intimately involved. And I must say I've never seen such comprehensive effort to build this from all the different building blocks while at the same time providing a broader, more integrated view, which is what you should have at a university level. And in this sense, it was absolutely remarkable, and I frequently ask people at a unit level or faculty members about the level of involvement. So Anthony, I don't know where you're getting that from, but the notion that this is an administrative plan is simply not true. The third thing is there was an incredibly comprehensive effort to do briefings of this plan, I would say, to the point where we were getting tired of all the briefings of the different components of the plan, and an invitation to provide comment that brought hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments from across the university, and I know a few board members did also provide their comments, but I've never seen such an effort to actually integrate so many different comments into the strategic plan to have this come forward in a way in which the university would see itself and see its future. And for that, I have utmost respect for Provost Jones and all of his efforts, because quite frankly, I've never seen this level of effort to produce something that was short, snappy, and set a future for the university. The third part of this is the degree to which you want it to be flexible. And if you want it to be flexible, then you do not provide a detailed implementation plan. So you cannot have it be both flexible and have every single element of the plan detailed and described and how you go forward, because that tends to be a trap. And it is particularly a trap for this university, for which, as you know, we have neither a state budget and we're also trying to hold the line on tuition. So this is a situation for which the resources that we have are resources that can change rather dramatically. And so what you do in a plan like this, with 20 pages that set the direction of the university, for which I think that it's setting the direction in a way that anybody in higher education or in U.S. industry that sees the landscape these days and realizes this focus on natural resources, this focus on human health, the ability of this university to move forward on those particular topics is absolutely critical and critical to the mission of a land grant. This gives us a blueprint for how to move forward. And then how do you move forward? How do you set that stage for implementation? Well, you do it by taking that, I'll give you an example of the managing of natural resources and pick energy as an example, for which we laid out a whole group of characteristics of exactly how strong we are. And we have 8 deans and more than one institute director sitting there mapping out a strategy of how we move forward on that particular area. this is an implementation area, and that implementation will depend on philanthropy. It will depend on whether or not we get a state appropriation. It will depend on all sorts of things, but we will see exactly what it will take to create an energy university. And I would tell you that if you look at it with the themes of access and affordability, the themes on human health, the themes on managing resources, energy, the theme that's on engagement, these are the things that have been presented to the board meeting after meeting, and they've been presented to the faculty and even the students. So I don't want to get frustrated with this particular process, but you've got a plan that sets out a direction for this university that has this university prospering in all those areas that are particularly critical to society, and that fit exactly with our mission. And I'm really going to worry if we're going to sit there and question about the degree to which faculty involvement has been there when it's probably the most comprehensive that I've seen at any of the institutions that I've been at so far. And to sit there and say we shouldn't do this until we have a level of implementation that tells us exactly what we're going to do and exactly what we're going to measure, because we're going to be doing that each year with, here's the step we're going to take on Invent Penn State. Here's the direction we want to go on this economic development. That's the theme of this strategic plan. We've seen the outline of it come forward on the board. There's a lot of activities that are there, and even 12 different topics that are focused on. But the implementation of those 12 is going to depend on our ability to get resources. And to say, okay, these are the resources that we need. This is actually a case where we're going to do everything we can to achieve that goal, and we're going to be seeking resources to do that. And the board's going to be busily approving them or not approving those resources in order to create that strategic plan. So we could get caught up in the notion of a perfect process, an implementation, a measurement of things that we're going to do, but I would really, really encourage you to say, okay, I don't like the fact that we're focusing on energy, food, and water. That's a policy decision. To sit there and say, okay, I am looking forward to seeing what is the implementation for food, water, and energy, because I want to make sure that it's real and it takes you to the point that you're at. But to take a crisp 20-page strategic plan for a comprehensive university like this, where everybody in this university says, okay, we see it. We're going to move in the human health directions. We're going to move in Invent Penn State. We're going to move on access and affordability. And to say that this is not got it from A to Z yet, and therefore it's not approvable, is a mistake for the university. And I know I just went on too long, but I will tell you, I took each element of that strategic plan and I walked right down into the colleges to see if it was there. And it was there. That council was an integrating body with broad representation. And these themes that we're talking about, we've been talking about them for a year and a half, and they've been evolving and improving, and they're the right direction for the university. And so I hope you'll improve this, because to go back and to continue to work on this plan in terms of having the whole thing from A to Z is a job that doesn't make any sense. Whereas taking a vision and saying, okay, energy, university, here we come. This is what it takes to do it, and have all these themes involved and create that plan and tell that to you at different meetings. That is the way we should be operating with the board. So thank you for indulging me to go on that sort of long description, but there have been a lot of people involved, and this is a good vision for the university. It's a good vision for the university.
President Barron, I really appreciate your insight and your input in making that presentation at this point. Thank you very much. Additional comments from the trustees.
Yeah, Keith, this is Barb.
Yes, Barb.
Yeah, first off, I want to thank Dr. Barron because it is true, I think, from the beginning, you have made very clear your vision for Penn State from your opening speech to us and at public meetings, and I think there's a lot of initiatives that I'm very enthusiastic about, and I think it is a rich brew, and clearly a lot of people have a lot of input, and there were many opportunities here, and it reflects it, in my opinion. But as I said, and I'm not, and when you're talking about implementation, I understand a detailed implementation plan, that is, your side of things. But I just still don't see, after all is said and done, and Dan, by the way, thank you, because you did ask all the right questions, and because I know you've been through this a million times in your career, but I still just don't see, this really is ultimately about resource allocation, and even though, yes, it's a living, breathing plan, and it should be, there can be at least the general parameters, for the near term, the medium term, and the long term, and some way for us, as a board, at least for me, as a trustee, to understand how we're going to measure how well this is working. Because, Dr. Barron, you're right. This is a big, complex university, many moving parts, and you're going to be collaborating across many different areas and establishing processes that haven't been done before. And, where do you pull resources from here and there and everywhere? And that's where, I don't see a way to understand that or to monitor that. So to me, I love this part of it, but to me it's just we need one more part of it. And it's not some detailed thing which you all will, evolve over time, but something that really does help understand, at least for me, a little bit better, how we're going to measure progress, and so on. But
other comments from other members of the committee?
Chair Eckel, Rick D'Andrea. The implementation part of the plan, Barb, is something that I was interested in as well. But ultimately, I think implementation of the plan, making it something that's a living, breathing document or a set of objectives that becomes part of the fabric of the university in a real way, is an administrative responsibility. And I sense in Dr. Barron's approach to this, Provost Jones' approach to this, a commitment to not allowing this just to gather dust on a shelf, but rather to follow through with implementation in a real way. And I think there's a lot to be said for allowing for flexibility. I think, Barb, the process of defining the progress or success on these various thematic approaches and foundations would probably be too complex because of the multiplicity of academic units and administrative units that will be involved in one fashion or another with many of these different themes. And I do see an emphasis on business planning for academic and administrative units to help with the management of resource allocation and to do so in a way that's aligned with the priorities. And so that much is spelled out in the implementation approaches. So I think ultimately at this stage we have to trust in the commitment and dedication to implementation of the plan by Dr. Barron and his administration. And I think each of our committees, to the extent we deal with different aspects of the university, will be able to oversee the extent to which there is a follow-through of the type that we all would like to see. So I join in the applause for what I think has been a very comprehensive and inclusive process and a very good outcome in terms of reducing this plan to an effective 20-page document, and agree with Dan and Dr. Barron that we should approve it as drafted.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't want to belabor, my the things I've said, but Keith, sorry.
I was Barb. You've spoken twice. I want to.
Oh, I'm sorry. I understand.
And I will go back to you, but I want to give any other trustee on the committee an opportunity to speak, or those members of the committee who aren't voting members will have an opportunity to speak. Anyone else?
Keith, this is Betsy.
Yes, Betsy.
Hi. Yeah, I'm in favor of approving it. My expectation was that this is the basic plan, and then the implementation and evaluation would come later as later steps. So I like the thematic priorities. I like the goals that we've set with this plan, and I'm in favor of approving it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Huber. Any other comments?
Chair Eckel, Chris Huffman.
Yes.
Thank you. As the new member of this committee, looking at what the document I have in front of me, and as I went through trying to understand how these foundations were put together and who was involved, and not being on this board for a long period of time, it did seem to me that there was quite a bit of input as I got the answers to my questions. As I went through this document, I kind of looked at what the mission of our college is, the land grant mission, and I think it really fits into where the mission of the college and where we need to move it forward over the next 5 years. The certain areas that are looked at are really something that I think is important to the future of the college and also to the folks that it will affect. So I like what I see. I appreciate all the hard work that went into it, and I look forward to seeing us accomplish these goals, putting forth measures as we move forward. Times change, things are always moving left and right, and sometimes you have to move with them and address those and set those guidelines as you go. So I really like what I see so far. Again, being new, I didn't get to see how this all came together, but I think there's a lot here to do, and I guess my only part that I thought was kind of concerning to me is it looks like we chewed off a big chunk. So I commend the administration for what they're trying to do over the next 5 years.
Thank you, Trustee Hoffman. Further comments from any of the trustees who haven't spoken, and then I will go back to Trustee Duran.
Yeah, this is David Hahn.
Yes, Dr. Hahn.
I just wanted to comment on the level of faculty involvement in the drafting and preparation of the strategic plan. And as I look at the members of the University Strategic Planning Council, I see Faculty Senate representation there, including the current chair of the Faculty Senate, Mohammed Ansari, as well as Roger Egolf, who, of course, is well known to this committee, having served as the University Faculty Senate Planning Committee representative to this group. The University Planning Committee of the Faculty Senate did have the opportunity and took advantage of that opportunity to provide feedback on this document and did, in fact, comment specifically on some of the concerns that have been raised by other members of this group. Specifically, the feedback suggested that the strategic plan be framed conceptually as three pieces. The first is the foundation and priorities, which is the current document under review. The second would be strategic action items, and the third, the assessment process and metrics. The feedback from the University Planning Committee also specifically mentioned that it does understand that the strategic plan document should be finalized before these action items are fully developed. I think that reflects on Dan Mead's comments that this is a document in front of us that does reflect the foundation and priorities it's more of an anchoring document than an operational document. So I would suggest that the input from faculty would suggest that this document, which does provide the foundation and priorities of our strategic plan, should be approved in its current form. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Hahn. Other comments? Hearing none, I go back to Trustee Duran.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Keith. Before I would say what I was going to mention, that was interesting what David just said. Now, David, sounded like they were almost suggesting 3 different plans that would make up an overall strategic approach, with this being called something else, sort of the vision, mission statement with then 2 other parts. Was that what you had been describing?
Well, what I was describing is, it's sort of a 3 pieces to the entire strategic plan, but this part, you can call it what you want, but this really does outline the foundation and priorities, and that finalizing this piece really occurs before you fully develop the action plans, which I think comments a little bit on the fluidity that we've heard discussed already.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I just think any strategic plan should have, the parts we've been talking about included. And then I wonder, and Dan, what, or Eric and/or, in terms of how we would monitor this going forward and how successful and what do you envision how, the board will be apprised of, the rest of it and how it's going and what the goals, and because again, it's still, to me, I do think, I do love this part of it, but I just still have the same concerns that I really don't know how it's going to unfold or what resources it's going to mean and where the stresses and strains will be.
Barb?
Well, I do think you will see it emerge and actually emerge in a very careful way. So let's take the fact that we have 8 deans and some institute directors and the VP for research that are meeting regularly just on the energy piece of the resource management component. And the Health Council, which includes all the different colleges and institutes related to the health initiative, are also meeting on this. So one of the things that they're doing is developing a philanthropic plan to go with each one of those to request resources to try to support those particular elements that will take us to a particular different level. And there is a piece of it which is the proposed for a state allocation, and if you remember, the board approved a state request last year to support the Invent Penn State initiative with entrepreneurs and residents. And then we have a piece of it for which we take resources from other parts of the university to try to move forward on a part because we decide that it's the higher priority. These are actually very conscious elements, and I would say the number of pages that are wrapped around the energy piece is now probably exceeds the length of the 20-page strategic plan, and that will boil down to hopefully a couple of pages for an elevator speech for philanthropy, a whole list of things that it will take to move us forward in energy. So there are 5 themes in energy. One of those themes is on regulation. One of those themes is on fossil fuels. One of them is on renewables. One is on efficiency, effectiveness, smart cities, smart grids. And one of those is on environmental issues. Each one of those has a list of things that are emerging underneath it on what direction that we need to go in order to move the university from a position of being number 5 in the nation to, say, 3 or 4 or number 1, depending on which theme it is. And all of those documents that for each one of those themes is in a draft form of multiple pages. So if I were to take that and expand it to what it is that we're talking about accomplishing here to have a strategic plan that goes from A to Z, I'm going to deliver to you hundreds of pages that the board will not read. And I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm not trying to be offensive there. It's just the simple fact of the matter is we know that the number of pages governs what it is that people will read and what they will do with it. So we've set a vision. out of this will emerge in that theme an energy focus, a two-pager for philanthropy, a list of target positions that would help us move forward in each one of those themes. And then as an administration, we're going to look very carefully and say, look, we probably can have the biggest bang for the buck if we focus first on the regulation piece of it. Because, look at the difference between New York and Pennsylvania in terms of the energy industry. Regulation is incredibly important. We rank number 5 in that category. We've got a lot of juice that we can, and we'll be telling the board that this is the direction that we're trying to do. But this is really a very comprehensive, integrated philanthropy, integrated strategic plan, set of ideas, sitting down all together to say this is what it's going to take to move us into this direction. I think the other thing about being A to Z is it will take a long time. We're probably looking at some time, and we started in September or October on energy. We're probably March or May will emerge the documents just on that piece, and now just sort of extrapolate that for the rest of the strategic plan. So I'm convinced you will see it. I'm convinced that you will feel comfortable about the directions and the choices that we're making. I think it'll be a little more interesting discussion to pick the metrics. I wrote a National Academy report on how it is you do metrics to assess the success of programs that come out of strategic plan. It's not a particularly long document, but there are about 18 things on whether you have the right inputs and what your outputs are, and a lot of people just measure outputs instead of the impacts and the things that go further down the line from there, and so it would be an interesting discussion from a board viewpoint to decide at what in those 20, 25 different characteristics that we judge these strategic plans by that we might want to particularly focus on. But this is a very serious, comprehensive, effort-intensive part of this that we're already working on turning those 20 pages into a plan. And I promise you're going to see them. And maybe you'll see them to the point where I'll present, here's the direction on energy, and you'll nod your heads at the board meeting, and we'll go on to a different topic. But I do think you will see it, and you will see it in abundance. But to do it all ahead of time, we'll neither gain us friends on the faculty or the administration, and we'll discover 2 years out that someone gives us an amazing gift, and it completely changes what it is that we're doing in our priorities because we got something that we didn't anticipate getting. But you will see it. I promise you will see it. And you will see it to the point where you don't want to see it anymore is my prediction.
Yeah.
Thank you. I believe I've had input from everyone, and I believe that we have discussed this subject to a point that we're ready
to a vote.
Yes. Yes.
Take a vote for the vote. Yeah.
Okay.
Take a roll call vote on this?
We do have a call for the vote. It is highly unusual. I don't know that I've ever done it as a chairman before, but I've participated in, I was sitting here thinking, at least 35 strategic plans for different operations, some larger than this, some smaller than the university. And I've got some simple tests that I've applied, and it is why I will vote yes when we have that roll call. First of all, for me, a strategic plan has to be visionary, and especially for a university. I believe this gets A+ in that effort. A sensitivity to diversity, be it across the various academic schools, be it across the various types and backgrounds of the students applying, it has to be sensitive to diversity, and this plan does that. It emphasizes accessibility for students, critically important. And it has within it strong calls for accountability. And I believe most important, there's flexibility. I have always been suspect of plans that lay out 5-year plans with specified goals each time in a world that is changing every day. So flexibility for me is an absolute must. So as chairman, I need to speak out at this time to say to Provost Jones and everyone who has interacted with this plan that indeed they have done, in my opinion, a great job, at least as how I view how strategic plans should be done. And I am totally amazed. I think everybody has said 20 pages, and someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 18. I was astounded by the conciseness and directness of this. So as I call for the vote, I've made these comments not in an attempt to influence any member in their vote. I make these comments because I think you need to and deserve to know what the chairman is thinking about this issue. And efficiency is important. I would hate to think that we would take as long to make a strategic plan as it took us to cover the 5 years that it's supposed to cover. So I think it's time to move on rather than to study it to death. With that, I will ask Tom to read the roll and record the votes.
Eckel,
Yes.
Huber,
Yes.
Dandria,
Yes.
Duran,
No.
Hahn,
Yes.
Hoffman,
Yes.
Lebrano,
No.
Mead,
Yes.
Mosser.
Yes.
Voted 7-2.
The motion carries by a vote of 7-2. This was the sole purpose for this meeting, and at this time I'll close the meeting with my appreciation for our committee members making themselves available for today's call, President Barron participating in this call and providing us great information, and to all the staff, and especially again to the committee members for taking their time and studying over the holidays, doing their homework, and coming so well prepared for this meeting. The chair will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Have a great evening and Happy New Year to each and every one.
Happy New Year to you.
Oh,
Thank you.
bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith.